All right, so let's walk through some of our scripting examples from the lecture above. So first, we have a couple of files here. So I've created 3 files, bash.sh, so look at that real quick. And this is our bash script. We'll come back to that in a sec. I've created ruby.rb, which is our Ruby script. And I've also created php.php, which is our PHP script. So we're going to look at each of these individually, and each of them do the same thing, basically backing up our WordPress database. So just so you guys know what's going on here, I'm working on the same server that I was working off of last week where we set up our WordPress site. So on this server is a WordPress database in MySQL, so all of these backups should work properly. So first things first is we need to make sure we have everything installed to be able to run this. So like I said, bash is already there. We can cd, change directory, all that stuff. So bash is there, and we know that will work. The 2 things we need to make sure we have installed are Ruby and PHP. So let's just, for good measure, run apt-get install php5 CLI, remember command line interface, and then Ruby and IRB, which is Ruby's interactive shell. So it looks like we have all of those installed, so that's good. If you didn't have those installed, they would get installed for you, and then you'd be all set to go at that point. So let's start with our bash script, and we're using the Nano text editor. We're going to go into our bash script, and we're going to just take a look at this and see what it does. So first of all, we don't need to install any special software for this. This is just going to work. Now, the first thing you'll notice is this first line, and in any bash script, you always have to start with this # bash or # bang or exclamation point, and then bin bash, which is the path to the bash command. Sometimes this could be env bash, but usually you can't go wrong with bin bash. So just remember, if you're going to write a bash script, you need to have that at the very top of your file. You only need to have it once. You don't need it in multiple places, just at the top of your file. So other than that, we're not doing anything crazy here. We're just putting commands in that we would typically run in the shell. So we have an echo statement here, which all this is going to do is print a line of text out to the command line. So these are just so we can let the user know what's happening in our script. So here we have echo backing up database, and then we're just running a MySQL dump command, which is a backup script or a backup program that will dump a MySQL database into a SQL file. And this just comes installed when you have MySQL. You get this command line option, or you get this command line program available to you. After that runs, we're going to echo done, and then we're going to echo compressing backup. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run the tar command on this bash backup.sql that we just created in the command above it. And then when that's done, we're going to echo done. Now, this isn't very sophisticated. If there's a problem in any of those, the program will just quit. It's not very smart, but generally, if it's something this simple, it's pretty much always going to work. There's not going to be too many problems you're going to run into here in this particular backup script. So let's exit out of here and give this a try and see what happens. So just so you know, you can run these echo commands will work just in the command line. So they'll just print things out to the screen. Pretty useless in this regard, but it will help us when we are running our script. Now, one thing you need to make sure you do before you run any bash command, and you only have to do this once just to make sure the script is executable, you need to do a chmod +x and then the name of the script, so bash.sh. And by the way, whoops, you also have to spell chmod correctly. There we go. Okay. You'll also notice the .sh. That is essentially the extension for shell commands or shell scripts. In the case of bash, you don't even really have to have that on the end. It's a good idea just so the operating system and the user knows what it is, but it's not necessary. It will be necessary on the other files, but with bash, it's not necessary all the time. As long as you have it executable, and as long as that first line is in your file, you should be good to go. Okay, so let's give this a run and see what happens. So for bash scripts, all you have to do is be in the same directory and do /bash.sh, and this will run that script for you. So here's what it's doing. First of all, it's asking me for my root MySQL password. And then there we go. It backed it up, compressed it, and we can see from our printouts here that it is done. So now if we do an ls-al in our directory here, you can see that it did indeed back up our database for us. So let's jump back in there real quick. And look at a few things. So first of all, this MySQL dump command, I did put the username here, the root, but I did not supply a password. I just put a P flag there. So this command is going to prompt me to enter my password. Now I'm doing this now because I don't want to put my password into here and have it saved. If you were running this on a private server, you could just hard code your password in there so that you could run this completely in a completely automated fashion. You wouldn't have to enter a password there. But just for the sake of this demo, I'm just going to go ahead and enter the password myself. And then following here after the P flag is the name of the database we want backed up. So we have to tell this MySQL dump command what database we want backed up. And then what we're doing here is we are outputting this command to bash-backup.sql. So it'll dump all of that to a SQL file for us. And then what we're doing down here is we're using our tar command to create a new file called bashbackup.tar.gz, and we're going to feed that the file we made up here to compress it and make it into a smaller file so that we can take that off the server or file it away for something else. And then you can see our result here. There's the original SQL file at 290,000 bytes, and you can see the backed up compressed version is only 45. So it's 45,000. So it's much smaller. All right, so on to the next one, which is Ruby. So let's open up Nano and look at our Ruby file. So notice here we don't have any special lines at the top. We can just use a standard. We can just start putting the commands right in here. Because this is a .rb file, it knows it's Ruby. And again, instead of the echo, Ruby has a different function for that, and it's called put-s or puts. And we are going to output text to the screen this way. And then because this is a programming language or scripting language and not native Bash, these languages have special functions or methods for running commands on the shell. So in Ruby's case, it's the system function. And within the system function, you can see the exact same commands that we used in our Bash example. So let's save this. We don't have to change any of the executables on this. We can just type Ruby and then the name of the file. And again, it's asking me for my password. And the script has run successfully. So now we can do an ls-al, and we can see right here that it's backed it up the same way. And it's identical to, well, just about identical to our Bash run backup. So last but not least is PHP. So let's go into our PHP script, and we can see what we have to work with here. So in PHP, we do have to have the special commands at the top and bottom to let this know that's a PHP file. So we have our PHP opening and closing brackets down here. We have the same echo commands that we see in our Bash script. The one thing you will notice on these lines, though, is that at the very end I have this /n, which is essentially a hard line break. And this will prevent all of our commands from executing on the same line. This is particular to PHP, and it's just something you'll get to learn as you go through this. Also notice that all of these lines are terminated with a semicolon. In Ruby, we didn't have to do that, and in PHP, all lines have to be terminated with a semicolon. So that's just something to remember. Again, the same MySQL dump and tar commands, and we have an echo statement at the end that will print our done command. And again, with a line break there so that it doesn't all appear on the same line. So let's exit out of here, and php.php. That's kind of confusing. Basically, when you want to run the PHP or the Ruby scripts, you basically type PHP and then the name of the script, or Ruby and then the name of the script. So here we go. Backing up and compressing WordPress database should ask us for a password. And there we go. And if we do an LSAL, we can see that our PHP backup also ran. So there you have it. So that's the same backup done 3 different ways, all scripting with programming or scripting languages in our bash shell. So there's a lot more you can do with that. Those are very, very simple examples. But as long as you have the proper libraries installed on your machine, so in our case that's apt get install PHP 5, PHP 5 CLI, Ruby, IRB, you should be good to go. If you were using Python and you wanted to write a similar script in Python, you'd need to go apt get install Python. And actually, it looks like Python is also installed. Yep, there we go. So all of that is good to go. I don't use Python a lot. There we go. Okay. So that's general basic scripting, and a pretty handy one at that. You'll always want to be backing up your databases if you're using something similar to WordPress or a database-backed application. Another thing you might want to do with that script to add to it is to then send that file over to another server. So not only would it back up your database on your machine, but then it would send it via SSH or SCP over to another backup server off-site or in another data center for extra protection. So there's lots of stuff you can do with that, and that should be enough to get you curious about scripting actions on your server to make your life easier.